Ethan Carter, a man revered worldwide as a tech genius, sat pensively in the penthouse atop the city's tallest building. Through the massive glass walls, the lights from millions of skyscraper windows reflected in his eyes but failed to brighten the somber gaze within. A man who had conquered everything, a billion-dollar corporation, the respect of his peers, and even the covers of the most prestigious magazines, now felt an unshakable emptiness. 3 months ago, when Ethan signed the contract to sell the company he had devoted 15 years of his youth to building, he thought it would be a moment of liberation. He envisioned having time to relax, travel the world, and live the life so many people dreamed of. But reality turned out to be the exact opposite. With no more intense meetings or races against time to dominate the market, Ethan realized he had no idea what to do with the sudden freedom. Each morning he woke up in a spacious but hollow apartment, facing the unsettling silence of his own existence. Lavish parties, invitations to collaborate with major corporations, and even social connections couldn't fill the ever-widening void within him. One evening, when the city's usual hum seemed to quiet down, Ethan sat before an old wooden desk he had kept since his early startup days. His hand grazed the only family photo he still owned, a picture of a 7-year-old boy with bright, sparkling eyes standing next to a mother whose gentle smile radiated warmth. He thought of his childhood in the countryside, where he once ran barefoot across golden wheat fields and listened to birds chirping in towering trees. That memory felt like a missing piece of his soul, something he had unknowingly lost in his relentless pursuit of success. At that moment, a thought sparked in Ethan's mind. He needed to go back, not geographically, but to a simpler way of living, a place that could help him rediscover himself. He didn't need more money or fame. He needed a reason to live, a true reason, not just numbers in a bank account. Ethan decided to contact a real estate agency, not to search for a luxurious villa or an upscale resort, but to find a place detached from the glamorous world he had grown accustomed to. After exploring various options, a desolate piece of land in a remote countryside caught his attention. It was an abandoned farm deep in a valley where overgrown vegetation had claimed the old buildings, and the sky seemed closer to the ground. The real estate agent described the farm as unlike any other property Ethan had encountered. It had once belonged to a wealthy family, but had been abandoned following a mysterious tragedy. Locals nearby whispered that the farm was cursed, claiming that cries could be heard in the wind at night, and that anyone who had lived there met with ill fate. Hearing this, Ethan wasn't frightened. On the contrary, a strange curiosity stirred within him. Something about the story drew him in, as if fate itself was leading him to this place. "I'll take it," he said, deciding on the spot. He wasn't sure if it was intrigue, a sense of destiny, or simply a desire to escape his current cycle. But he knew the farm was calling out to him. 2 weeks later, with a small suitcase and an off-road vehicle, Ethan left the city. For the first time in years, he had no schedule and no specific plans. He only had a vague feeling that this journey would bring him the answers he had been seeking for so long. What he didn't know was that what awaited him at the abandoned farm would not only be a discovery, but also a turning point that would change his life forever. Welcome to Soul Stories. Today we bring you a heartwarming tale. Let us know which city you're tuning in from around the world. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to catch more meaningful stories. The field in front of the farm was shrouded in misty drizzle as Ethan brought his car to a stop. Stepping out, his polished leather shoes immediately sank into the soft mud, leaving blurred footprints on the ground. The scene before him was desolate. Cracked brick walls, red tiles weathered by time, and gnarled, barren trees reaching skyward like ghostly hands. A cold gust of wind swept through, carrying the rustling whispers of wild grass and an inexplicable, eerie feeling Ethan couldn't quite shake. Glancing around, Ethan felt something wasn't right. A vague sensation as though he was being watched. His eyes fixed on small footprints pressed into the mud near the farm's gate. They weren't animal tracks. Too regular, too distinct. They were human footprints, yet tiny, like those of a child. Kneeling down, Ethan lightly touched the muddy imprint, the chill biting at his fingertips. Straightening up, he scanned his surroundings, but all he found was silence. The wind hissed through the dilapidated walls as if the place was hiding secrets it didn't want revealed. Over the following days, after Ethan officially moved into the farm, his unease grew. Small, peculiar details he discovered each day seemed to weave a story. A basket of wildflowers appeared neatly placed near the livestock shed one morning. An old window, previously sealed shut, was now slightly ajar, as though someone had slipped inside. On one pitch-black night, Ethan swore he saw a faint glow from a lantern flickering near the barn. But when he went to investigate, everything was eerily still. He didn't believe in ghosts or the farm's rumored curse, yet these strange occurrences were impossible to ignore. Someone was here. But who? And why were they living in such secrecy? One night, as lightning split the sky and thunder roared across the valley, Ethan was jolted awake by an unfamiliar sound. It was crying, soft but filled with despair, slicing through the otherwise still night. At first he thought he imagined it, but the sound came again, clearer this time, seeming to echo from the direction of the livestock shed. Without hesitation, Ethan grabbed a raincoat, picked up a flashlight, and stepped outside. The rain poured relentlessly, its icy drops pelting his face, forcing him to pull his coat tightly around him. The crying continued, mingling with the sound of the rain, guiding him closer to the barn. The old wooden door creaked loudly as he pushed it open, and the beam of his flashlight cut through the darkness. In one corner of the barn, he saw a young woman huddled on the ground, clutching a child tightly. The baby was crying, its face flushed red, though the cries softened as the light illuminated them. The woman looked up, her wide eyes filled with fear. Her hair was disheveled, her soaked, tattered clothes clinging to her trembling frame as she tried to shield the child from Ethan's gaze. "Don't be afraid," Ethan said gently, trying to ease the tension. Lowering himself to her level, his voice softened further. "I mean you no harm. Who are you? Why are you here?" The woman didn't answer immediately. She held the baby closer, her expression a mix of terror and wariness. After a long pause, her voice finally emerged, weak and barely audible. I have nowhere else to go. I didn't know this farm belonged to anyone. I just needed a place to hide." Ethan sighed, lowering the flashlight slightly to ease the pressure on her. "My name is Ethan Carter. I just bought this farm. How long have you been staying here?" Her silence lingered, a flash of guilt crossing her face. "About 3 months, she finally admitted, her voice hoarse. "I didn't mean to cause any trouble. I just wanted to protect my son." She glanced down at the child in her arms, her voice softening as though the boy was her entire world. "My name is Grace. This is Oliver, my son." Ethan looked at the two figures before him, a surge of compassion and confusion welling up inside. He didn't know their story, but it was clear they were in a desperate situation. The baby, no more than a few months old, had stopped crying and was now gazing at Ethan with wide, curious eyes. Lowering himself further to meet Grace at eye level, Ethan spoke firmly but with warmth. "Listen, Grace, I don't know what you've been through, but it's clear you need help. You can't keep living like this in a barn. Let me help you. We'll figure something out, all right?" Grace looked up, her eyes filled with doubt but also a flicker of fragile hope. Ethan had no idea that in this very moment, he had unknowingly stepped into their lives, setting off a chain of events that would transform not only Grace and Oliver's future, but also his own. Sitting in the old kitchen of the main house, Grace hesitantly lifted the cup of hot tea Ethan had just made for her. The silence was broken only by the soft patter of rain on the tiled roof. Oliver had fallen asleep in a makeshift cradle that Ethan had repaired himself. Grace glanced at the child, her eyes filled with love and worry. After a long moment, she took a deep breath, as though gathering the courage to say something. "I don't know where to begin," Grace said, her voice hoarse, "but maybe you should know who I am and why I'm here." Ethan sat across from her, his gaze patient and gentle. He didn't speak, only nodded, as if to say she could share anything, and he would listen. Grace lowered her head, her thin hands gripping the cup tightly as if to steady herself. "I grew up in a normal family in a small town. Everything was peaceful until I met Daniel." The name escaped her lips like a sharp blade, causing her shoulders to tremble slightly. "He was charming, knew exactly how to say the things I wanted to hear. At the time, I thought he was my entire world. She drew in a deep breath, a flicker of bitterness crossing her eyes as she continued. We got married after just a year of knowing each other. But only a few months after the wedding, I realized Daniel wasn't the man I thought he was. He was controlling, temperamental, and violent. Ethan leaned forward slightly, his gaze filled with sympathy. He hurt you? Grace nodded, her eyes reddening. At first it was just insults, irrational fits of anger, but then he started using his fists. I endured it because I thought things would get better, that he was just stressed from work. But I was wrong. She paused, as if to regain her composure, before continuing. When I found out I was pregnant, I thought it would change him. I believed that a child would make Daniel better, that he'd learn to love and take responsibility. But things only got worse. When I told him, instead of being happy, he got angry and accused me of trying to trap him. Ethan clenched his hand on the table, trying to stay calm as she recounted her story. How did you get away from him? Grace looked at him, a spark of determination flickering in her eyes. I couldn't let my child grow up in an environment like that. I knew if I stayed, neither of us would be safe. One night, when Daniel was out, I gathered everything I could carry, some clothes, a little bit of savings I had hidden away, and I ran. Where did you go? Ethan asked, his voice gentle, as though afraid of adding to her pain. Grace let out a dry laugh. I didn't know. I just ran as far as I could. I went from town to town, never staying long for fear that Daniel would find me. I slept in my car, sometimes in shelters. But when the money ran out, I walked until I came to this area and found this farm. She glanced around the old house, her expression softening. I knew it was abandoned, but I had no other choice. This was the only place where I felt I could be safe, at least until I figured out what to do next. Ethan remained silent, letting her continue. Life here hasn't been easy, Grace admitted, her voice breaking. I had to walk miles just to find water. I foraged for wild plants, dug for roots, and occasionally relied on the kindness of strangers for food. But Oliver, she looked at the sleeping child, her eyes brimming with love. He's the only reason I didn't give up. I couldn't let my son suffer the way I did. Ethan felt his throat tighten. Grace's resilience filled him with admiration. Despite everything she had endured, she had held on to her dignity and her fierce love for her son. She hadn't begged for pity, only fought every day to survive and protect her child. Taking a deep breath, Ethan tried to steady the emotions welling up inside him. Grace, I can't imagine what you've been through, but you can't keep living like this. It's not safe here, and this place doesn't have what you and Oliver need. Grace looked at him, fear and a glimmer of fragile hope mingling in her gaze. I don't know where to go. If Daniel finds me... Ethan interrupted her, his voice firm and resolute. You don't have to be afraid. I won't let him hurt you or Oliver. You can stay here, but not in the barn. I'll fix up this house, and you'll have a safe place to live for now. We'll figure out a way to help you get your life back. Grace was silent, her eyes welling up with tears. She couldn't believe a stranger would be willing to help her like this. After months of living in fear and despair, for the first time, she felt she wasn't alone. Thank you, she whispered, her voice trembling. I don't know what else to say. Thank you so much. Ethan smiled, gently placing his hand on the table, as though silently promising that she and Oliver wouldn't have to face their struggles alone anymore. Their lives, though filled with challenges, had just been lit by a flicker of hope. And for Ethan, though he didn't realize it yet, this moment marked the beginning of a transformation, not just for Grace and Oliver, but for himself as well. The first rays of spring sunlight bathed the farm, carrying a warmth that chased away the biting cold of winter. Ethan stood on the front porch, a cup of steaming coffee in his hand, gazing out at the scene before him. The once desolate land was now brimming with new life. Wild grass had been cleared, the soil tilled and ready for its first planting, and the main house was slowly being restored to a cozy home under his and Grace's care. Grace emerged from the livestock shed, a bucket of water in her hands. Oliver sat in a small pushcart nearby, smiling brightly when he saw Ethan. The boy had grown accustomed to Ethan's presence. and his laughter lit up their days like a beacon. Ethan stepped off the porch and took the bucket from Grace. "You don't have to do everything on your own," he said with a gentle smile. "We're a team, remember?" Grace smiled back, gratitude shining in her eyes. "In that case, can you help me prepare the garden bed in the backyard? I think it's time to plant the seeds." Ethan nodded. "Let's do it." They got to work early in the morning. Together, Ethan and Grace repaired the damaged parts of the main house, relaying wooden floors, replacing windows, and painting the walls. Ethan wasn't a skilled handyman, but with determination and Grace's guidance, he learned how to wield a hammer, a saw, and tools he had never touched before. There were moments that made them both burst into laughter, like the time Ethan tried to paint a wall but accidentally spilled an entire bucket of paint on his feet. Grace giggled as she watched him clumsily try to clean off the sticky paint. "I think you're better at running companies than painting wall," she teased. Ethan simply laughed, shaking his head. "Everyone has to start somewhere, right?" In the afternoon, they turned their attention to the plot of land behind the house. Grace showed Ethan how to till the soil, plant seeds, and water them. The small seeds they buried in the ground felt like a symbol of new beginnings. "I've never done this before," Ethan admitted, holding a packet of seeds in his hand. "But there's something calming about it." Grace nodded. "Gardening is a way to connect with nature. My mother taught me that. Whenever I felt stuck, working in the garden always brought me peace." As they worked, they began to open up to each other. Ethan shared stories of his childhood, a boy who grew up in the absence of parental affection. His father was a busy businessman, and his mother was an artist chasing her own dreams. Ethan often felt abandoned, which drove him to prove himself by becoming a successful person. But even after achieving everything, he realized he was still lonely. Grace listened intently, her eyes filled with understanding. "I think you've done better than most people," she said softly. "You didn't just build a successful career. You have compassion. You didn't turn your back on Oliver and me when we needed help the most." Ethan smiled faintly. "Maybe, but I think you and Oliver are the ones helping me. Without the two of you, I don't know what I would be doing with this farm." Oliver was also a vital part of this journey. Despite his young age, he brought joy and life to both Ethan and Grace. In the afternoons while Ethan worked, Oliver would lie in his stroller, waving his little hands and giggling whenever Ethan turned to look at him. Ethan often paused, picking up the boy, playing with him, and experiencing a warmth he had never felt before. Grace watched these moments from a distance, her heart brimming with gratitude. Ethan wasn't just a wealthy man willing to help them. He had become someone who provided Oliver with a model of love and protection. Gradually, the farm began to transform. The main house grew warm and full of life. The garden in the back began to sprout, promising a bountiful harvest. The livestock shed was repaired, ready to house more animals in the future. But the most significant change was within the people living there. Ethan realized that each day spent working on the farm was not just about repairing a place, but also about mending himself. He felt closer to life than ever before, and the emptiness in his heart was gradually replaced with a sense of fulfillment. Grace changed as well. The worry and fear in her eyes slowly faded, replaced by hope. She felt stronger, no longer the passive woman fleeing her past. She discovered her strength in building a new life for herself and her son with her own hands. One evening, as the three of them gathered around the fire inside the house, Ethan looked at Grace and Oliver, and an indescribable feeling overwhelmed him. This wasn't his family, but they gave him something he had long yearned for: connection. He realized that sometimes the meaning of life isn't found in grand achievements, but in the small, significant moments shared with those we care about. "Thank you for staying," Ethan said, breaking the silence. "Because of you and Oliver, I've realized what I need to feel whole." Grace smiled, her eyes shining. "We should be the ones thanking you. Without you, I don't know where we would have gone." The three of them sat there, bathed in the warm glow of the fire, feeling as though they were beginning a new chapter in their lives, a chapter filled with hope and love, built on sharing and healing. As Ethan worked on repairing the attic of the main house, he stumbled upon an old wooden chest tucked away in a dark corner, covered in layers of dust. The lock was rusted and easily broken. Lifting the lid, he found it filled with journals, a stack of old photographs, and a carefully sealed envelope. Intrigued, Ethan pulled out the items one by one and began to explore them. The journals belonged to a woman named Eleanor, a former owner of the farm. The early entries described a simple, peaceful life. Eleanor wrote about her husband Henry and their two children, about days spent working in the fields, dinners by the light of oil lamps, and dreams of transforming the farm into a flourishing haven. But as Ethan turned the pages, the story began to shift. Eleanor detailed changes in Henry's behavior, unannounced absences at night, a growing coldness in his gaze, and clumsy, obvious lies. One name started to appear repeatedly in her entries: Rose. Henry said he needed more time in town to handle work matters, but I know that's not true. I've heard the whispers about him and Rose. That woman? I don't want to believe it, but all the signs point to the fact that I've lost Henry to her. Eleanor described her pain and struggle to keep her family intact. She felt betrayed by the man she had trusted implicitly. Yet Eleanor's feelings weren't solely of resentment toward Henry. In later entries, she expressed complicated emotions about Rose, anger mixed with pity. Rose isn't the only one to blame. Henry chose her, but Rose is also a woman like me. Perhaps she was searching for something she lacked, just as I was. I don't know if I can forgive her, but I hope that one day she understands the damage she's left behind. In the stack of old photographs, Ethan found images of Eleanor's family, moments of happiness before tragedy struck. But one photograph stood out. It depicted a young woman leaning against the farm's fence, her eyes staring into the camera with a sorrowful expression. On the back it read, Rose, Summer 1961. Ethan realized this must be Rose, the central figure in Eleanor's anguish. The photo raised more questions than answers. Who was Rose? How had her relationship with Henry begun? And why had she come to the farm in the first place? Inside the carefully sealed envelope, Ethan found a handwritten letter, its script elegant but full of emotion. It was addressed from Eleanor to Rose but had never been sent. The letter revealed Eleanor's inner turmoil and a faint hope for reconciliation. Rose, I don't know if I can forgive you. Henry destroyed my family, but I don't think all the blame lies with you. Perhaps I share some of the responsibility for not seeing the cracks forming. This farm is my home, and I know it once was yours too. If you ever return, bring with you a sincere heart. I don't want the past to haunt us forever. The letter unveiled an unexpected truth. Rose wasn't just Henry's lover, but seemed to have a deeper connection to the farm. Perhaps she had lived there before, or the farm held memories tied to her youth. This revelation only deepened Ethan's curiosity about Rose's story. As Ethan read through the journals and the letter, he couldn't help but think of Grace. Eleanor's story, with its betrayal, pain, and efforts to protect her family, mirrored Grace's experiences. Both women had faced loss and challenges that were far from easy to overcome. Yet both had displayed extraordinary resilience in rising above their suffering. Ethan began to wonder, was Grace's arrival at this farm purely coincidental? Or did this land have a strange way of drawing in those in need of healing, just as it had with Eleanor in the past and Grace now? Ethan's discoveries revealed part of the tragic history of the farm, but left many questions unanswered. Who exactly was Rose? What happened after Eleanor left? And why had Grace been drawn back to this place? Ethan felt as though he held a fragment of a larger story. The farm, with its layers of memories and wounds, was not just a sanctuary for Grace and Oliver, but a part of her family's history, a piece she had never known. Ethan carefully packed the journals, photographs, and letter back into the chest, his mind heavy with the stories of the past. He knew he needed to share what he had found with Grace, to help her understand the connection between her family and the farm. But he also understood that this wasn't just about uncovering the past. It was about finding a way for both of them to heal and begin a new chapter in the very place that had witnessed so much tragedy. Are you still following the story? If yes, comment, interesting. Ha 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 ha. The serene morning at the farm began like any other. Grace tended to the small garden behind the house while Ethan repaired the fence nearby. Oliver, with his radiant smile, played cheerfully beside them, bursting into giggles whenever Grace leaned down to tease him. The peaceful scene was abruptly interrupted by the growl of an unfamiliar car engine echoing from the farm's entrance. Grace looked up, her eyes narrowing as she recognized the familiar, battered gray truck approaching. The basket of vegetables fell from her trembling hands, her face draining of color. "It can't be," she whispered, her legs threatening to give way. The truck came to a halt, and from the driver's seat emerged a tall, imposing man. It was Daniel, her ex-husband and the man who had abused her for years. His stride exuded a chilling confidence, his cold eyes fixed on Grace. Ethan immediately noticed the fear in Grace's expression and stepped forward, placing himself between her and the stranger. "Who are you, and what are you doing here?" Ethan asked, his voice calm but firm. Daniel sneered at Ethan. "I'm her husband," he declared, "and I'm here to take her and my son back home." Grace took a step back, trying to suppress her trembling. "Daniel, you have no right to call yourself my husband anymore," she said, her voice steadying despite the fear. "I left you. You have no claim over me or Oliver." Daniel stepped closer, his eyes burning with anger. "You think you can run from me forever, Grace? You can't survive without me, and I'm not letting you steal my son." Ethan immediately intervened, his tone low but resolute. "Oliver isn't your property. You've done enough harm to Grace and her child. You're not welcome here, and I suggest you leave now." Daniel glared at Ethan, his fury evident. "And who the hell are you to tell me what to do? Do you think you can protect her?" he snarled, taking a threatening step forward. Ethan stood his ground. "Yes, I can, and I will. Grace and Oliver are safe here, and I won't let you hurt them again." Daniel's sneer faltered for a moment, Ethan's unwavering stance causing him to hesitate. Behind Ethan, Grace stepped forward, her eyes filled with newfound determination. "Daniel, that's enough," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "I'm not the woman you can control anymore. I've had enough. You can't hurt me or my son ever again." Daniel turned his fury on Grace. "You think you're stronger now? You're nothing without me. You're just a weak woman running away." Grace clenched her fist, taking a deep breath. "Yes, I was afraid of you, but not anymore. I won't let you ruin my life again. This is my life, and you have no right to interfere." Daniel froze for a moment, his gaze flickering between anger and helplessness. But before he could respond, Ethan stepped forward again, his voice sharper than ever. "You should leave before this gets worse for you. If you come back, I'll call the police." Daniel finally retreated, but not without a parting threat. "Enjoy your little victory while it lasts. I'll be back. She won't live in peace." With that, he stormed back to his truck, slammed the doors shut, and drove off, leaving a cloud of dust behind him. As the truck disappeared from view, Grace collapsed to the ground, tears streaming down her face. Ethan knelt beside her, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. "You did great, Grace. You're stronger than you think." Grace looked up at him, her tear-filled eyes brimming with gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you, but I knew if I didn't stand up to him, he'd never stop." Ethan took her hand, his voice warm but firm. "You're right. We can't let him control your life anymore. We'll do everything we can to protect you and Oliver." In the days that followed, with Ethan's unwavering support, Grace decided to take a crucial step toward reclaiming her freedom. They visited a lawyer in the nearby town, where Grace recounted her entire story, from years of abuse to the fear that had kept her on the run. The lawyer encouraged her to file charges against Daniel for his abusive behavior and to request a restraining order to ensure her and Oliver's safety. The legal process was far from easy. Grace had to relive painful memories and face probing questions from various parties. But she wasn't alone. Ethan stood by her side every step of the way. He cared for Oliver when Grace met with the lawyer and was her biggest source of encouragement throughout the ordeal. A few weeks later, Grace received an official restraining order from the court, barring Daniel from coming near her or Oliver. Knowing that the law was now on her side, Grace felt a profound sense of relief. She no longer had to live in fear or look over her shoulder. Watching her son play in the farm's garden, Grace felt she had finally reclaimed the life she once thought impossible. "Thank you, Ethan," she said, her eyes filled with gratitude as she looked at him. "I don't think I could have faced him without you." Ethan smiled, his eyes shining with pride. "No, Grace. This was all you. I was just here to remind you of how strong you really are. And now you've proved it. From that moment, Grace was no longer just a survivor. She was a victor. She had conquered her past, reclaimed her freedom, and was ready to build a new future. One free from Daniel's shadow and filled with the light of hope and renewal. Ethan sat quietly at the large wooden table in the living room, where the morning sunlight streamed through the window, casting a warm golden glow over the old weathered journals. His curiosity about the story of Eleanor, Henry, and the woman named Rose remained unquenched. The fragments he had uncovered in the attic seemed to reveal only part of a larger, more intricate picture. In particular, the name Rose Everly and her photograph had seized his thoughts. Ethan couldn't stop wondering, who was Rose, and why did she have such a profound connection to this farm and to Grace now? Determined to uncover the truth, Ethan decided to delve deeper into the farm's history by visiting the town archives. After hours of sifting through dusty old documents, Ethan stumbled upon a list of residents from the 1960s. The name Rose Everly appeared in the records, listing her as a resident of the farm, though it noted she had only lived there for a short time before leaving in 1963. Even more intriguingly, the documents revealed that Rose had inherited the farm from her parents, who had passed away when she was still very young. However, due to financial difficulties, Rose had been forced to sell the farm to settle her debts. It was then that Henry's family had purchased the property. Strangely, though, Rose had remained on the farm, working as a hired hand for the family for about 2 years before finally leaving. The records also mentioned that Rose had married a few years after leaving the farm and moved to a different town. This discovery solidified Ethan's belief that Rose was Grace's grandmother. The Everly surname and the timeline perfectly matched the story Grace had shared about her family. Returning to the farm, Ethan decided to examine the attic more closely. Among the old belongings, he discovered a small tin box concealed amidst the clutter. Inside, he found a carefully sealed letter, its envelope bearing Eleanor's distinct handwriting. The letter, written by Eleanor to Rose but never sent, conveyed a mix of anguish and a yearning for reconciliation. Rose, I've tried so hard to understand you, but I can't stop feeling betrayed. You knew Henry was my husband, the father of my children, yet you chose to stay. I've asked myself countless times, why? Did you feel as lonely in your own life as I did in my marriage? I can't deny that, despite my anger, I feel sympathy for you. I saw it in your eyes when you looked out at the fields, as though searching for something you could never have. You once told me this farm was your home, the only place you felt you belonged. But perhaps, like me, you never truly found peace here. Henry destroyed both of us, Rose. But I don't want you to think that all you left behind was pain. I saw vitality in you, a strength I sometimes envied. If I could say one thing to you, it would be this. Don't let the past define you. Move forward and find a place where you can truly belong. The wheat fields will always turn green in the spring, Rose. Whether we are here or not, this farm will endure, but we must find a way to endure without it. If you ever read this letter, I hope you found the happiness that neither I, Henry, nor anyone else could give you. Eleanor. This letter revealed a deeper layer to Eleanor's character. Her anger mingled with compassion and a subtle envy of the freedom Rose had once pursued or dared to seek. It also marked Eleanor's attempt to release her pain and send a silent blessing to Rose, even though her words carried the unmistakable weight of emotional scars. Ethan was left wondering, what had truly happened between Eleanor, Henry, and Rose during their time together? Why did Eleanor choose to preserve this letter rather than discard it? The complexities of their story seemed to deepen with every new discovery. As Ethan pondered these revelations, he realized that the farm was more than just a witness to past pain. It was a place steeped in memories and the potential for renewal. Though he was unsure whether he wanted to uncover every detail, he recognized that some fragments of the past were best left incomplete, like pieces of a puzzle that didn't need to be fully assembled. More importantly, Ethan saw the farm not only as a site of old wounds, but also as a space that offered an opportunity for new beginnings. It wasn't just a relic of Eleanor, Henry, and Rose's lives. It was a place where Grace could confront her family's legacy and create her own future. In that realization, Ethan found himself even more committed to helping Grace uncover the truth, not just for the sake of the past, but to guide her toward the fresh start the farm seemed to promise. That evening, Ethan laid the journals, photograph, and the letter on the table in front of Grace. His gaze was cautious yet earnest as he spoke. "Grace, I think I've uncovered something very important about this farm. It might be about your grandmother." Grace picked up the photograph, her eyes lighting up with recognition. "This is my grandmother," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "My mother used to tell me stories about her, but she never mentioned anything about her youth or this farm." Ethan explained that Rose had once been the owner of the farm before Henry's family had purchased it. Rose had not only lived there, but had left an indelible mark on the history of the place. The unsent letter from Eleanor further clarified the complicated ties between them. Grace was speechless as she read the letter. Tears streamed down her face as she looked up. "My grandmother used to say she left part of her past behind to start anew. I never imagined that past was tied to this place. I've always felt a strange familiarity here. Now I understand why. This isn't just a refuge, it's a part of my family." This revelation gave Grace a profound sense of destiny. The farm, with all its painful memories and untold stories, was more than a backdrop to the lives of Eleanor, Henry, and Rose. It was an integral part of Grace's family heritage. Ethan realized that Grace's arrival at the farm wasn't a coincidence. "It seems fate brought you back to where it all began," he said, his voice thoughtful. With unwavering determination, Grace replied, "I don't think I came here just to escape my past. I think I came to face it, understand it, and start building a new future." Ethan nodded, his voice filled with resolve. "And you don't have to do it alone. Together we'll write the next chapter, starting from where everything was left unfinished." In the warm glow of the firelight, they both felt that the farm wasn't just a place of healing, but also a foundation for rebuilding hope and dreams. The farm, which had witnessed separation and sorrow, now stood as a beacon of reconciliation and rebirth. For Grace, it was no longer just a shelter, but the place where she discovered her roots. For Ethan, it was an opportunity to help someone else find healing while also rediscovering the meaning of building a true home. From that moment on, they resolved to transform the farm into a place that no longer represented the remnants of the past, but instead stood as a symbol of hope, love, and renewal. The farm had now fully come to life. The main house gleamed with a fresh coat of white paint, its windows spotless, reflecting the morning sun. The garden was alive with green rows of vegetables and colorful flowers nurtured by Grace and Ethan. A peaceful atmosphere enveloped the farm, as if all the pain and sorrow of the past had been swept away, making room for hope and regeneration. Standing on the porch, Grace cradled Oliver in her arms, the baby's wide eyes focused on the golden sunlight streaming in. Grace's heart swelled with gratitude, but a hint of anxiety lingered. This was Ethan's home, the place he had come to rebuild his life. She wasn't sure if she had the courage to tell him she wanted to stay, that she needed this place to be part of her own life too. That afternoon, when Oliver was sound asleep in his crib, Grace found Ethan in the garden. He was working on repairing an old wooden bench, his hands smudged with paint, his focus so intent it seemed the rest of the world didn't exist. "Ethan," Grace called softly, her voice trembling slightly. He looked up, offering her a gentle smile. "What's on your mind, Grace?" Grace sat on a nearby chair, clutching the hem of her shirt nervously. I want to thank you for everything you've done for me and Oliver. You gave us a safe place when we had nothing." Ethan tilted his head, his gaze attentive. "There's no need to thank me, Grace. I only did what I thought was right." Grace took a deep breath, summoning her courage. "I know this is your home, and I have no right to ask for more. But if you'd allow it, I'd like to stay here. For the long term, I want this farm to be more than a temporary refuge. I want it to be home for me and Oliver. I'll work hard, take care of the farm, and try not to be a burden to you. But I need a place to start over, and I can't think of a better place than here." Ethan was silent for a moment, his eyes meeting hers as if searching for the depths of her emotions. Finally, he set down the paintbrush and sat opposite her. "Grace, you don't need to ask for permission like this," he said, his voice calm yet warm. You've brought this farm back to life. You and Oliver aren't just guests here. You're an inseparable part of this place. If you want to stay, I'd be honored to call this farm your home too. Grace's eyes lit up, glistening with tears. Really? You wouldn't mind? Ethan smiled. Grace, you've been through so much. I can't think of anyone more deserving of a fresh start here. Together, we'll build a new life on this farm. In that moment, Grace felt a weight lift from her shoulders. The farm wasn't just a place to hide from the past anymore. It was where she and Oliver could begin anew, with Ethan by their side. That decision was not just a turning point for Grace, but also for Ethan himself. He realized that allowing Grace and Oliver to stay wasn't merely an act of kindness. It was a way for him to rediscover purpose in his own life. Inspired by Grace's resilience, Ethan decided to transform the farm into a sanctuary for other women and children in need of a fresh start. Ethan began reaching out to nonprofit organizations and local communities, seeking support to develop the farm into a safe haven, an environment where those who had endured hardship could find hope and healing. That day, Grace stood on the porch of the house, watching Oliver play joyfully on the grass. Ethan stood beside her, his eyes reflecting contentment and hope. The farm was no longer just a refuge for the two of them, but had become a symbol of healing, a place where those who had lost their way could begin again. Thank you, Ethan, Grace said softly, her eyes filled with gratitude. Ethan turned to her, a warm smile lighting up his face. Don't thank me, Grace. This is our home, and the best is yet to come. The farm, once forgotten, had now become a beacon of hope, of love, and of second chances in life. Thank you for following this story. Please rate it from 1 to 5 stars, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our Soul Stories channel. Your support is